A very big welcome here to Oxford, England and the Skoll World Forum on Social Entrepreneurship. And I'm really delighted to be having as my guest here, Chen, who is an artist, an entrepreneur, and best known perhaps as the creator and co-founder of Kickstarter, now serves as chairman of the board. And Kickstarter, for those who don't know, it's a crowdsourcing support for artists and for a whole range of creative enterprises. You were named a TED Fellow in 2010. In 2013, you were one of the top 100 most influential people, according to Time magazine. You've been a Director's Fellow at MIT Media Lab, and in 2017, you were appointed part of the Knight Commission on Trust, Media and American Democracy, which is a non-partisan commission for media leaders. You're laughing here. Why are you laughing?
Well, it was we're trying to boil the ocean with that one, trust, media and democracy.
Yeah, two go hand in hand. What do you think?
I think the concept of the fourth estate going back was a very integral part, but it actually was never codified very well. It's like a kind of an abstract conception of through like First Amendment or similar kind of free speech of a way that there could be other organizations or voices that could always challenge the government. But now today we live in a landscape of, say, media and potentially journalism, and those things are not necessarily acting as the fourth estate. A lot of them are acting as for-profit entities that are trying to get your attention so they can make money for shareholders. So we've lost the ability to identify what is actually acting in the kind of the theoretical manner of a fourth estate is conceived. Is CNN doing it? I don't know. They may be, they may not be. I think a lot of people who work at CNN are trying to do it. They're journalists at heart. I think ultimately what happens is that they're in a structure that mandates that they maximize shareholder value. And those things do not play well together long term. There's a primary objective, and then there are the secondary and tertiary objectives of delivering good information and good journalism. But those are always subordinate to the primary goal for like a classic American for-profit company.
That's quite a skeptical look, isn't it, at all the big American media corporations?
No, it's actually I don't see it in that way. I mean, I think it's just law. I mean, it's just law. A corporation, a C corporation, American corporations of that type, which are 99.99% of American for-profit structures, are mandated by law to maximize shareholder value.
But what's exciting, though, there are now a whole range of different types of corporations, like B Corp, like we're here as part of the social at the Skoll World Forum, talking to social entrepreneurs who are trying to maximize lots of different types of value.
Yeah, exactly, and I think what what we need to have, are the structures that allow us to do it. You can't do it in the old structures. They just literally legally don't allow for it. Your shareholders can sue you to maximize profits, and they will win.
And what's interesting is that Kickstarter is a public benefit corporation. Right. So can you explain what that means?
Of course. I think it's careful to try to maybe use this opportunity to speak about B Corp, because B Corp is actually not a helpful term. It's a conflated term that means people use to mean a few different things. There's B Lab certification, which is a nonprofit in the US that certifies companies for doing certain, like a social report card. And it's a very good organization. They fought really well, and Kickstarter is also B Lab certified. And then there's Public Benefit Corporation, which is actually the corporate form that we are, the legally binding thing. And that to me is the real sea change. So Public Benefit Corporation, what that is that as opposed to a classic for-profit, we're not mandated by law to maximize shareholder value. So as the directors and the officers, the fiduciary obligations we have are to balance shareholder interest along with greater stakeholders, society, environment, and public benefits.
And how does that make Kickstarter different from other corporations?
Well, in itself, that's what it is. Other corporations exist as legalized sociopaths, total self-interest through the prism of what is considered shareholder value, meaning that if you're not pursuing that, the individual is irrelevant. The CEO, other people, they'll just be fired constantly until somebody will go do that. And Kickstarter, we are legally allowed and mandated to consider how we balance material interests, our mission, which is the primary thing for us.
And what is the mission? How would you describe the mission of Kickstarter?
The mission is very simple: to help creative projects come to life.
And of all the creative projects that you've seen in Kickstarter, you've been in, out, what's the one that you have been most excited about?
That's a great question, thank you. Mine are a little often esoteric. I mean, there was a project that was quite, raised only a few $1,000s many years ago, where artists were raising money to go to towns of about 1,000 population, and they'd go there for a month or two and they'd write a handwritten letter to every single person that lived there.
Wow.
That they don't know. They just were able to get the addresses, and then they would mail them and they would leave. And it was really just like a very beautiful thing, and also people in the communities would all get the letters the same day and they'd all ask each other, did you get this too? What did yours say?
And were they artistic?
Yeah.
Were they written words, images?
All over the place. Sometimes they said some things that were completely absurd. Other times they commented on, I love your house and your lawn is beautiful, or sometimes they said, I want to just tell you about my day today. Today I went to the market, and so they just kind of like, when you have to write 1,000 letters, you just kind of keep trying things. So that was it. There was no malice involved. There was no benefit to them other than just trying to see what this would do. And people said in those communities, that people were talking to their neighbors often for the first time in a very long time, because now they had something to talk about. Hey, did you get this? What did yours say?
It's kind of obliquity, isn't it? Because you're creating social change via artists who are not doing it in a direct way, but are doing it by, sending these very personal, powerful missives to strangers, and therefore it's like permission to interact, permission to break the bounds of what is normal behavior. And the art, which doesn't do things in straight lines, is an enabler.
Exactly. You can have things that are attempted to be more direct, like Guernica and Picasso painting that very much as a response, wanting people to see the anger and the fear and the anxiety, but also in a way that I'm sure at the time people saw as also obtuse, these shapes, these characters, these things, but powerful. So I think with art and creative work, you have to have faith in it, versus trying to quantify it or trying to be like, it has to be overtly political. You have to allow that it works, as you say, in very obtuse ways.
That's very exciting. Now, your work itself in Kickstarter has not been without controversy, because you were CEO and then you weren't, and then you were in and then you were out. And there's stuff that's being written about what happened during your leadership and what went on. And what do you think you've learned about yourself from what's happened in the last month?
Well, I mean, for me, it's been like a 14-year journey. So, there's so many points in time when you're doing that, starting an organization as one person for years, and then building it, and then going to now, I think it's about 140 or 50. I don't know. What haven't I learned? I think it's interesting because for me, I'd never worked at a company before. I've been a working person. I've worked in restaurants, I've worked as a busboy, I've worked as a waiter. I've had jobs, but I never worked in an office environment in that way. And it's not my nature. I think more of the innovation and the creation and the problem solving, that's very, very natural to me. And then as you get into kind of like the inevitable bureaucracies and structures and all those things, it's learning a whole new thing. It's learning a whole new thing, right? It's like you move maybe from a student to a teacher to a principal of a school. And each stage you're very, very, you start in a great place having understood each stage, but there is so much new. I wrote all the copy on the website for the first 2 years while being the CEO and doing 4 other things. Now I don't do any of that, but I understand now what it is to do that. And I've done so many of the jobs there too, but I think you move from maybe even when we were 30 or 40 people, and everybody quite well. And then when you go into 100, 150, now people are less, you have less time with people. And it's just like, underneath this all, it's ultimately a question of leadership.
Yes.
And it's really a fundamental question around what is the point of leadership? For me, the Kickstarter, as a company that actually has a mission, like a nonprofit does, ultimately the responsibility is to serve that. Are we helping creative projects come to life, and are we doing so to the best of our ability with the resources that we have available?
But you need to have your team to support you, because if you don't, you're nowhere.
Oh, indeed. But the point is that there are so many people who our mission is their mission. We join together to work on it, right? I don't have to convince them that creative projects are critical for a healthy and vibrant society.
Yeah.
right? And so, to me, when we find those people and we work with those people, things work just beautifully. Things work absolutely beautifully. I think at a time like this, where there's so much anxiety in the world and there's so many things going on, and understandable, it's a very scary time. That often, it's. I would guess right now there's people at Greenpeace who are like, we need to solve homelessness, and Greenpeace is like, well, that's a great issue, but you're here at Greenpeace. We need to work on that. Or you're at the ACLU and they're like, let's work on the Second Amendment. And they're like, well, that's an important issue, but here we have to work on it. Because if you don't focus on something, you really can't get something done. And so for me, I'm responsible, I'm a steward of, probably close to 500 people who have been stakeholders in Kickstarter, who have been employed, who took lower salaries, who invested money, who haven't asked for much in return, who advised us, all these people over the continuum of 10 plus years, who have often without self-interest contributed towards the very specific goal of helping creative projects come to life. And that is the ultimate group. That's the group. The group is not just the very talented and well-meaning people that are in the office at any one time. As an organization that is not interested in selling or going public, which means it just becomes a shell that you're like, great, we get our money, the next bunch of you people deal with this. You actually have to not just only focus on the people that are there at any one time, who are very important, but the whole continuum where you've been and where you're going. And that's just the responsibility of leadership. And over time, how you have to hold that will change. And I learn and we learn, and we have a new generation of leaders in there right now, and I'm extremely excited for them and excited to support them on their journey.
And I know something that you're very interested now is in human-centric design, human-centric technology. Perhaps you can explain, and as you're an artist, you are the best place to help, or we can do it together, to kind of illustrate, as you're talking, the idea about human-centric technology. What does it mean? Because I'm not quite sure that I understand precisely what you mean.
In a way, I feel like, I don't know if other people refer to it as such.
But go on, tell me what you mean and why you're excited about it.
Yeah,
with a bit of
I think whatever I do here is not going to be related to that. I will probably just do some general graffiti of my name, which is what I spent all my adolescence doing, growing up in New York.
Where did you do these graffitis?
On walls, in the subways, at school.
And your name here?
Oh, that's just my last name, Chen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've graffitied it.
No. I think it looks good. We can collaborate.
But you're talking about human-centric.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's. I think more of it's like, look, technology throughout history has always been amoral. Right, not immoral, but amoral, right? We're starting from language as a powerful technology, the printing press, et cetera, et cetera. Technology is obviously not just our cell phones, let's not forget that. And it's been amoral, meaning it's been used for unbelievably positive things, and it's also been used for very, very, very problematic things. So really, ultimately, it's about how are we using technology? Right? How do we negotiate the use of the power of technology? And the fundamental thing is that it must be human-centric, meaning it must be a tool for us and aligned with our desires for better futures.
Our? Who is the our?
Our is the collective our of society.
But there's so many different stakeholders, different ours.
Correct, but there's so much different technology, meaning there is no one technology. So what I would say is that, let's break it down. I don't believe in everybody has the same goal or should have the same goal. So let's say with the supercomputer that most of the world has in their pocket. Now that supercomputer is not aligned with you. The supercomputer has an agenda that's set by the corporations that create the supercomputer, which are staffed by many people who deeply care about issues, but they're in the construct of an entity that is forced by law to maximize the profits. So you now have something that is immeasurably powerful in your pocket that is not aligned with the life that you personally would like to lead. It is an unwinnable situation. It is creating massive, massive problems, massive, massive anxiety. What we need is the technology like this to be able to truly be aligned with our interests. Not just enough so that we buy it, truly. Maybe what you want is I want to spend more time with my family. I'd like to read more this year. I'd like to do some more hiking. I'd like to start working on this and that. Your device should be able to help you do those things. That's 5-year-old technology. People are solving the wrong problems. Calendar apps now, an innovation is everybody at your organization can put something on your calendar. Well, it should be that it protects your time to do those things that you like. It should tell you it's the sunniest it's going to be tomorrow, then it's going to be all week. Would you like to move some things around? A student can write this. Corporations that control these spaces are not interested in doing it because they're dependent on our attention. And whether it's through advertising or whether it's through content or app purchases, because they're selling hardware, that's the paradigm.
There is a growing realization here amongst
Sure.
a lot of players inside tech companies as well as outside
Sure.
that the way we are using tech needs to be a bit more discerning. We need to, as individuals and as communities helping protect us as individuals, have a more critical engagement with technology and with some of the technology companies, whether it's about providing information or whether, as it's, you say, providing more and more clickbait to take up our
What
time.
I would say is this, is that Ford and GM and BMW didn't create the electric car. Now they're going to now, because the electric car now is shown. So that's the thing. I think that people in those industries, all of these industries, were wonderful when they started. Do you know how wonderful the pharmaceutical industry must have been when it was born? I mean, it's like a gift from God. Energy, all these things now that we look at as scourges, they all started very idealistically, with idealistic, well-meaning people solving incredibly hard, important problems. And what happens is that over time, the money dominates, and then it creates the framework that is inescapable.
So what's your solution? Because are you talking about a whole critique of capitalism?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
And what do you think are the solutions?
Well, I think the solutions are both where you work in and outside of the system, meaning that the concepts of a binary capitalism and a binary, say, socialism don't exist. There is no pure capitalistic system, there's no pure socialistic system. All countries, including the US, they're all a part of the spectrum. Every new regulation moves you between a little more along the spectrum. So first we have to remove ourselves from any binary conception. The language we have is like grade school language. That place is capitalistic, that place is socialistic. These are just properties that we move with each thing we decide as a society we want to do. So there is a system that can be worked inside. Secondly is creating alternatives. Meaning, like, let's say, for the car, Tesla is an alternative. Now, it doesn't mean Tesla has to take over the world of selling cars.
But Tesla is a company which has got shareholders.
And they can go out of business, and now the electric car will be on better footing than it ever was before because the technologies they created.
But that company was driven as well, perhaps by purpose, was also driven by profit, and yet it has created and helped democratize and help popularize electric vehicles.
Right. And ultimately,
so capitalism can work out for the better in certain circumstances.
But what I'm saying again to you is you're not talking about capitalism, you're talking about capitalistic properties. There is no pure capitalism. It doesn't exist. These academic arguments fail a world that is practical. Like the American system is not pure capitalism. It is highly regulated, right? So it's not that capitalism made it thrive, it's properties of capitalism that exist in the American context helped that.
And you want these properties to be modified, to be more regulated? What's your agenda?
I would think specifically that the kind of things that a structure like Public Benefit Corporation attempts to address, and again, it's just a current form, it's not the end game, but basically the biggest thing that we have to step away from is that we are mandating now that all these ideas that are being created, if they are going to be any for-profit context at all, they must become profit-maximizing sociopathic entities, and the legal mandate will mean constantly replacing anybody who does not do that. It cannot be overpowered by the people within. It just can't.
And just to return back to your life as an artist, what's your next creative project, just very briefly?
Sure, thank you for asking. I think in a way there's been some stuff I've been thinking about. It's been about 20 months since I've worked on art projects. I'm thrilled to get back. I think that we're probably moving into a world that is where we're going to less and less be able to trust our senses. I think people have focused on fake news, which is of course showing us a very challenging issue. But with the technology now of doing fake video, which will only get easier and easier to do, so you can imagine in 6 years a 15-year-old being able to make any world leader say anything they want. We're going to move into a world where we won't be able to trust our senses. And so I think we need to learn from people with sensory issues, let's say blind people, and how they learn to negotiate the world and negotiate trust. In a world where you can't trust your senses, it creates tribalism. You will trust the people you already know. Not to say there's anything wrong with them, but it creates a more insular and tribal world. And we will have to deal with those consequences in the return to some of those things. And so to me, the next project I'll do is to investigate that phenomenon more.
Sounds fascinating. Very, very exciting. Very good luck with it. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Perry Chen. And looking forward to come up in the next 15 or so minutes, Alex Lebec on financing clean water equity. Look forward to joining you then. Thank you very much.